All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. Good afternoon, good morning for some of you, potentially, depending on where you're at. We're going to get launched right away here. And as additional people filter in, they can catch on up. But we are here today to talk about how to get started using Microsoft Copilot. I am Thea Rasmussen, Director of CX Strategy with Broadreach, and I'm going to be your host for today's session. It is a pleasure to have you all here. Thanks for taking the time. Before we get started, as always, I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce Broadreach for those of you who may not be familiar with our group. Broadreach is a technology advisor and consultant with access to over 600 different suppliers across a variety of different technology pillars, inclusive of security, network connectivity, CX, AI automation, and contact center, just to name a few. We also have a killer back office team who provides both program and project management services that can overlay on top of complex multi-vendor projects. All that said, we don't actually directly sell anything. Instead, we sit on the customer side of the table and advise our clients on which technologies to procure and educate them as to why. Whether your initiatives are surrounding risk management, digital transformation, AI strategy, or cost reduction and vendor consolidation, we can definitely assist. Our team has an average of over 2 decades of experience, so we are ready to go. The last thing I'm going to leave you with here is where the name Broadreach came from, because I think it does a really good job of explaining the benefit of what we do. For any sailors out there, Broadreach is a sailing term, and it describes the combination of a sail position and wind direction that allows you to propel faster with a minimal effort. So that's really what we try to strive to do for our clients as well. So with that, let's get back to our scheduled programming. This webinar is a bit of a follow-up from what we did last month, where we discussed some best practices around security concerns and preparation, implementation and adoption strategies, as well as some of those potential evolutions outside of Copilot beyond that Microsoft stack. What we're here for today is to provide some clarity around some of the differences between the access levels and licensing with Microsoft Copilot, but also dive into some legitimate use cases where we've seen benefit, and also highlight where things might not be quite as mature as we'd like quite yet. So this session is going to be much more conversational, more ad hoc. I'm going to ask all my embarrassing questions with the hopes that some of you out there might share my curiosities. But this is going to be fantastic, very specific and grounded. So let's get started. I am joined today by someone I've known and respected for over a decade, I think. Michael Hawkins, the Director of Engineering and Product Marketing with BCM1. Michael, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm super stoked to be here. This is like one of my favorite topics, and the fact that it's ad hoc and just more conversational, I think will be super fun. But that being said, I'm Michael Hawkins, as Thea said, Director of Solutions Engineering Product Marketing for BCM. I've been with BCM for about a decade at this point through acquisitions, but I started my journey on the customer side, joined some of the large ISPs, earned my knocks and stripes in those, and then went on to the agency side to help find solutions for my customers before we were acquired by BCM1. So now I get to do all those fun things that I used to do, but with a much bigger budget and a great ecosystem of partners.
Awesome. Awesome. I appreciate you being here. So let's get started with what I promised that you're going to deliver on. Let's talk about the license types. Can you walk me through the different types and access levels we have with AI and both Copilot as a separate add-on versus what's inclusive, and maybe some of those iterations that are out there at this point?
Yeah, I think so. If you don't mind, I'm going to share a visual. We're going to jump back and forth on presentations, so kind of bear with me for just a second as we get this nice and big so you can see it. Can you see the screen?
Gotcha.
Awesome. So I think everyone is familiar with Teams that used to come with the M365 suite, right? And that was the one that was included, free. That's been the case up until April 2024. There were some legal things that caused Microsoft to separate Teams from that stack to be able to make some adjustments there for the EU market. That being said, what we're kind of talking about today are those add-on features that get you some of the cool functionality that both Teams and Copilot have. The two main ones that we focus on are going to be the Microsoft Teams Premium, which is a $7 per user per month add-on. And it gives you a lot of benefits. One of those we're using here today as far as the advanced webinars with registrations and communications. Thea and I just came out of the green room, the ability to practice ahead of time before you actually start webinars. Those are some of the things you might find within the Teams Premium one. One other piece that I really like on that is we start breaching that like light contact center, call center piece with advanced virtual appointment capabilities to be able to send SMS reminders, web joins, and schedules ahead of time. That's a huge, huge piece there. Where the AI kind of starts to kick in, and the interesting part, at least to me, is within Microsoft Teams Premium, you'll also get an intelligent recap. And Thea, that intelligent recap is just what we're kind of doing here today with it recording and transcribing. Instead of having to be part of that, taking notes as you're listening to a customer or a colleague, you're able to be involved and engaged in the conversation while the system itself is actually listening. So at the end of the meeting, it'll take that transcript and it'll go through and summarize it for you with a list of action items. Now that's super, super useful, but it is a static set of deliverables every single time. You're going to get a summary and you're going to get the action items. You can't really ask it questions. You can't change the output too much, but it's extremely useful for getting that meeting summary. And that's our Teams Premium section. Does that make sense, Thea?
It does, yeah. So the Teams that's included in just, well, it's no longer included, but the one that costs money, the premium version of Teams, is including the intelligent recap and real-time translation. Is my basic Teams not including any of this stuff? Is this all in addition to basic Teams? Okay.
This is all in addition to basic Teams. If you want to see a list of the full features for the Teams client itself, they've got that on the Microsoft website, and we can make a link available after the webinar if you would like. That said, when we start moving over to the real AI piece, the Copilot, that's $30 a user per month. And that's a pretty big jump from $7.
It is. Yeah.
So like, what all am I getting here that makes it worth it? That's where we start looking at our web grounding and our graph, which I think you guys talked about some, at least on the security portions and securing your environment and prepping for that AI journey so that it's only able to access the information that it should on your last webinar. And then it also really gives you the ability to take Copilot and insert it into your life. You can use it in any application that's within the Microsoft 365 stack where it's available. So those are things like, whether it's Outlook, one of the banes of my existence, tell me if this is the same for you. Do you ever try to search for something, an email inside of Outlook? My kingdom for a search that works, right? It's insane. So use Copilot. I can give it a little bit of context. I can say, hey, I think I got an email or a chat from Thea, I don't know, maybe a month ago, and we were talking about this webinar. Can you help me find that? I'm able to find stuff so much easier and so much quicker within Outlook than using the search bar. That by itself was worth the price of admission. But then you take that and you cascade it into all the different apps that you live in within the Microsoft environment. So I also live in Teams a lot, and inside of Teams, I've got Copilot there as well. It is the same Copilot, but because it's inside of a different app, I'm using it in a different context. And that gives me different results based on the data that it's able to access. We'll get into all those parts and pieces, but the ability to query it, the ability to talk to it like a human, to be able to extract information from it, like Thea and I are conversing, that's really where that extra license on the Copilot side comes from versus just the static standard output every single time of a summary with action items. Both benefits, but boy, I love the Copilot.
And then there's also rolling out the Copilot for sales and Copilot for service options, which are different iterations of Copilot. Those appear to be a little heftier in price, $50 a license per user per month. And really what I see is they just integrate into CRMs and provide some AI and automation capabilities and querying, like you're talking about, from the actual CRM itself. Is that how you understand it so far?
Yeah, so far. So they just went GA, and we've only been able to play with stuff so much, but that is absolutely it. So you've got the Microsoft Teams ecosystem that has all that, the graph, the web grounding, all those pieces. That's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. And if your business happens to live completely within the Microsoft 365 stack, you might be able to get away with just Copilot. But my organization, we use Salesforce.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the pertinent data that I need to be able to ask questions about doesn't live within Microsoft. So I have to make a bridge somehow to be able to get the intelligence and querying abilities of Copilot over to the data that's actionable and useful within Salesforce. That Copilot for sales or Copilot for service or operations, those are the platforms that are going to give us the ability to do those integrations and make those natural language queries into our monstrosity databases.
Mm-hmm. And even more reason to talk about DLP, which we talked about last time. But I mean, when you're querying not only just files and recordings and such in the Microsoft stack, but now you're opening it up to your entire CRM, that can be a little scary. Well, this makes sense to
Exactly.
me. I somewhat recently got licensed with Copilot, and I will say that I'm not there's been instances where I thought, oh my gosh, that was really helpful. But I think I need help knowing how to use it. And I also want to talk about the differences and the nuances of, okay, if I'm in Word versus PowerPoint versus Excel, like where's the true benefit? Can we talk about maybe some of the use cases and the different applications and what's working and what is showing some productivity enhancements that you've seen?
Yeah, definitely. And there are areas of strength and weakness. We are at the infancy of AI. If you were to look at
Mm.
this on like a timeline scale of any magnitude, we're at the very, very, very beginning. So there are parts of this that work insanely well that I find super useful, and other parts that are so-so. I will go ahead and give my little analogy here, Thea. I think Copilot is fantastic if you treat it like a really smart, really eager intern. It's like a very first year intern. They don't know anything about your business, but they have the ability to go out, they can research things, and they do exactly what you tell them. And as long as you do that and you specify exactly what you would like that output to be, you can usually get pretty good results out of it. Now, sometimes I still have to massage it after I'm done, but it gets me to the 90th percentile, and that saves a ton of time. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge piece. So the first thing is learning how to prompt is probably one of the most useful skills that we'll continue to see in IT as AI develops over the next decade. Being able to learn how to get out of the AI what you really are trying to extract is super important. And that all starts with how you ask the question. If you'll allow me, I'll share one slide and then maybe we
Yeah,
can do a video on some examples of where it works really well and where
that would
maybe
be
it needs a
great.
little love. All
I need to
right.
leave here with at least three new nuggets of how to use it.
Ex-
Or it's going to be taken away from me, I
Exactly.
think.
So I'm going to go over this one first because it's the prompting. This particular prompt is in relation to a security MSP. So they're saying, hey,
Hmm.
I need to find information. I've got to send a report to my manager, and we had a security incident. How do I do it? Well, I know what my goal is. I need information about this incident. Okay, what's the context? Who's my audience? Who's it going to? Oh, I need it for a report so I can submit it to my manager. Now, you can imagine that an internal document would have a different tone than what an external customer facing document might have. So that piece of context is key. Expectations, I want you to take all the information in that list and give me a short summary of it. And where this happened, it happened inside of Microsoft Defender. So you're going to be able to find more information about it inside of here. Even better, we have what is called a one shot or a two shot. If you've done something with AI before and you've gotten the result that you want, remember how I said you can ask it the exact same question and it won't always give you
Yeah.
the exact answer or the same answer back? You can do what's called one shotting or two shotting, which is taking that beautiful final product that you got exactly what you wanted, and using that as part of the prompt. Here, give me information about this incident. I need to send it to my manager. I want you to compile a short list and look inside Defender. Oh, and by the way, please make it look like this. If I do just those 5 things, I get to that 90th percentile very quickly in being able to prompt it and then start iterating quickly to get to that final product. Overall, it usually reduces about 30 minutes of my daily tasks or on those specific tasks by 30 minutes every single day.
I'll take it. I'll take 30 minutes in a day.
Yeah,
So I
and if
I think
you're
I've been
doing that a
asking it too
bunch.
simply. And also, I mean, I'm going to say this, and it may make me sound really silly, but I'm being very transparent this time on my webinar, and I'm not going to be pre-scripted on my questions. So I found out the hard way that documents that you want it to reference need to be in a specific place, right? So it seems very obvious when you actually think about it. Yes, of course. If I save it on my desktop, it doesn't see that. So OneDrive, SharePoint, that's the only thing it can see. So I ended up sharing a document with myself and adding it into SharePoint to gain access to it. But I'm just shameless plug.
Hey, if it
Make
makes
sure
you
it's
feel
in
better,
SharePoint.
the first time I used Copilot, I couldn't figure that out either. I had a document on my desktop. I was trying to drag and drop it in
Yeah,
there.
I was like, here you go, Copilot's right
It's
here.
right here.
I was trying
Yeah.
to hand it, like, take it. I wouldn't take it.
But the good news is that's actually a security feature.
Yeah, I know. It's
Because that
good.
document doesn't live
Yeah.
in the graph, it doesn't know what to do with it, so it doesn't know if
Yeah.
it's supposed to. So I guess
Hmm.
while annoying, as long as you know how to use it and how to prompt it and
That's a
where to
good
put your
point.
documents, it's okay.
Yeah. The more you know.
Exactly.
All right. So I also have been using it. I've queried a couple of my meeting recordings, and that's the really nice thing because I think if people look at Teams Premium and they say, well, I have the recap, what do I need outside of that? It's good and it does the AI notes and all of that, which is fantastic, huge time saving. You can stay engaged in the conversation. But I was asking about like sentiment of someone,
Hmm.
because I wanted to make sure from an AI, perspective with a lack of emotion, was I reading into a sentiment that wasn't there? So how did so and so feel about this decision that we made? And it literally gave every single option and it would pull parts of the transcript so that you can also human double check it as well, which I
Yeah.
appreciate because I'm very type A and I'm hard to trust new technology, but I want to play with it. But it shows you, and you're like, yeah, you're right. Okay. So it's a good little recap for me to say, okay, I think we're good here. Or I think this needs to be addressed. It was the first time I queried a meeting, but it was pretty interesting. That said, I've also tried to use it in PowerPoint because I thought it
Hmm.
could be really powerful in doing new generating content. Because, we think about GPT-4 and we think about all of these image creation capabilities that it has. I don't feel like Copilot is there yet with PowerPoint. What are your thoughts there?
So your mileage is going to vary between applications right now,
Yeah.
without a doubt. So we've run a Copilot pilot. I think that's how you say that. Copilot
Copilot
test.
pilot?
Yeah, Copilot pilot within our company. And we found the 3 biggest applications or the 3 most used applications when it came to Copilot was Microsoft Outlook,
Hmm.
Microsoft Teams, and Microsoft Word. Everything else beyond that started really dropping off. And I think that there's a reason for that. And it's based on where we are in that AI life cycle. Right now, AI is really good at getting you up to the mean. It gets you to that medium part, right? Where everyone operates. So like me, myself, I'm terrible at Excel. I don't remember the formulas. I'm not that good at it. I'm not in it that often. So for me, it brings me up to the median. Now, what we found though, were people in our finance, people in our accounting departments, those back end offices who live in it, who are what you might call an Excel guru or an expert. Copilot gets you to the mean. So for them, it actually kind of took them down. It took them
Mm-hmm.
longer to type out what they would want to do in natural words than all the brilliant formulas that they've got memorized and the things that they're used to doing.
Mm-hmm.
So not only will your experience vary within the application, but it could also vary by the user who's using the application too.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That's a ton of sense. So what are some of the examples of real productivity boosters? I know you talked, there were some short videos potentially that you had on how to use it. Maybe some features and functionality that we don't quite know are there. Do you have any secrets for me?
I do. Let's go to some of our videos here. Thea,
Okay.
we're going to do our our PSTN one first, if I can get it to go. 1 second. So this video shows you how you can go through Microsoft Copilot and ask exactly what you were talking about, Thea, the sentiment. So tell me what each participant thought and what they were most excited about within the meeting. It will go through and do this. And I apologize, we can't do this live, but there are data protection and sensitivity things
I
that
was
we
trying to
just
find something
couldn't
myself that
find
we
a
could
way
play
to
around. I'm
work
like,
through it.
no, can't show that. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So that can be a little bit difficult, but I do have a couple more examples. Give me 1 second.
Awesome. Yeah, take your time. It's interesting. I like the query capability. And also, I don't know if this is the one you're doing next. I don't know if you can do Outlook next because I feel like that's really
Yes,
connected for me.
you got it.
Um, because I think there is an option that I'm trying to figure out of how to get it. It's essentially cloning yourself. This is what I'm gonna call it. It's cloning yourself, where you can be present in multiple meetings in a convenient fashion without actually joining. So, okay, I'll let you do your video here and we can watch it.
Yeah, this is so huge. I couldn't agree with you more. As soon as they came out with this feature, it's like being able to clone yourself.
Okay, we can't hear it though on our side. So this one,
And, oh, give me 1 second.
can you
Sorry,
change it? That's
I
fine.
sure can. That was user error on that
Is
one.
this,
I
I
probably should
gotta,
have used Copilot.
I got, right. Hey, Copilot.
Let's try that one more time.
Okay,
Copilot in
there we go. We
Outlook can
got
help
it.
you prioritize your time and stay on top of meetings. Here, you've been invited to a meeting that conflicts with another meeting you're already attending. Clearly, you can only attend one. From the meeting invite, you can choose to RSVP with follow. Switching over to your calendar, you can see that you're now following this meeting. Once the meeting starts on Teams, the organizer will receive a notification to record the meeting because someone is following it. Now, after the meeting is done and the recording is ready, Copilot will notify you that the meeting recap is ready for you to review. You can then ask Copilot some questions about the meeting, like, summarize this meeting, or, are there any action items for me? That way you can stay on top of things as if you were present during the meeting.
See, that's cool. You know what? Really what it's doing here is it's not even super sexy technology. It's essentially saying, hey, don't forget to record this meeting because these people want it. But then it's putting the recording right in the meeting. And it also gives you an indication that, hey, you're going to want to follow up on this meeting as opposed to you declining because you can't go and it disappears from your calendar. It's the littlest iterations that make it so much more productive. So I don't have that follow button, but I have Copilot. What is the problem? Where is it and how do I get it immediately?
So it is GA. So that usually means that one of your admins, and this is a constant struggle even for technology, like innovating companies. Microsoft's releasing new features, new functionality, and that requires constant updates on the admin side too. So there's a
Mhm.
little slider button that needs to be enabled within your organization that says allow users to follow meetings with Microsoft Copilot. Once
Mhm.
that's on, that follow button will be there and you can then enact the service.
Okay. So I
But the
need
funny
someone
thing
with
is, like,
deeper levels of access to me, is what you're saying.
yeah, and what's really interesting to me, Thea, is even some of my Microsoft guys who are just like super in it, like they live in that thing every single day, administering clients' environments. They don't even know some of the newest stuff that's coming out because they're focused on what's currently being deployed. So
Mhm.
it really is kind of a team effort on these new AI features, keeping everyone abreast of what's going on and how to work as a team between those who want to consume it and those who are administering it.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think of, we work projects and we do consulting engagements with our customers about AI strategy, and how to use Gen AI throughout their organizations. And I think almost every organization we talk to about it has some sort of use case around getting an answer from a slew of information. It's almost that knowledge based access It's like the concept of agent assist with knowledge base. And it's interesting because I feel like there's this does that internally, right? This does that already. It's already pre-built with your own Microsoft data, and it already handles all the access levels that you need to put in place from a permissions and accessibility perspective on the back end. So I think people think of Copilot as just Microsoft only, but that's also part of its benefit. Now, I'm also curious. There's Studio for Copilot. I haven't had access or gone into that, but can it integrate into things outside of the Microsoft stack too, so that you can use that as your Gen AI tool and your bot?
Yeah, so Copilot Studio is a really cool option. I'm by no means a coder. I'm a scripter. I've got some skills, but not a developer by any stretch of the imagination. So I went into Copilot Studio to figure out if I could create a GPT and what the effort would be. It's almost no code, or at a minimum, very, very, very low code.
Okay.
What you're doing is you're going through and you're creating the personality for your GPT and giving it the boundaries. You're also
Nice.
giving it a very specific set of data, because when we create, rather than using one of the general models like Copilot itself, which is the generic large language model, we can take those and we can put experts into them and give them specific information so they get really, really good at one subject. Their brains are only so big, even for the computers. They can only hold so much information. So if we stuff it with all kinds of very specific information, he may not be very good at general tasks, but it'll be really, really, really good about that specific one. And that's one of those benefits of creating your own GPT within Studio. I've used it only for internal. There are also external ones, and you can even create webhooks that will allow you to do instant chats with customers to place on your website for customer-facing ones. As I'm looking at like the Microsoft roadmap on, and I'm speaking more on the Teams phone side, you can see a lot of where their integrations are going or where their goal is to be that kind of contact center light for a lot of people. That fits somewhere in between a normal PBX and a really expensive full-featured contact center seat. And I see that both within the Copilot Studio for being able to do those webhooks, and then later on being able to escalate that into a video or a voice call directly from the website without the other person actually having to have any kind of PSTN, just a browser.
That's interesting. And I
It is
haven't
very
used it
interesting.
on the voice side outside of meetings. Um, how are people using it there?
Well, it's
Because
almost like you knew I had a video for that one.
I don't know if I
I'm
knew
gonna.
that or not. We won't say
I don't
that
know
out
if you did
loud,
or
but
not,
it's
but
interesting because we're Teams voice users, so I want to know how to take advantage of this and how close to contact center light we truly are getting here.
yeah. Let me share one, and then let's have a quick conversation about some of the stuff that they're doing within it.
Okay.
With Copilot,
I did it again, Thea.
No, I hear it.
Oh, you did hear it.
I
Okay, good.
did. Now you're just like the
in Teams
anticipation is
Phone,
building.
you
You're
can
like,
make
Now I'm psyching
and
myself out.
receive calls from your Teams app on any device and get real-time summarization and insight. Here, you're on a call with a teammate discussing the plans for an upcoming marketing event. During the call, Copilot can summarize key action items, owners, and deadlines discussed, so you don't have to worry about getting distracted by taking notes. Or you can use natural language commands, such as asking Copilot for suggestions on additional planning work streams you and your teammate should consider for the event you're planning. Copilot also works during PSTN calls. Here, you're on a PSTN call with a customer who is interested in learning more about your company's recent product announcements. With the help of Copilot, you can summarize the call, helping you stay focused and engaged during the conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry I paused it.
Copilot can also curate a list of unresolved questions that came up during the call. The customer has some specific questions that require input from another subject matter expert in your organization. Using the Consult Then Transfer feature, you can chat with your colleague and confirm she's able to help the customer with their questions. Now, when you transfer the call to her, thanks to Copilot, she's able to get a summarized recap of your
Oh,
discussion and a
what?
list of the top questions raised by the customer, all in a matter of seconds. This saves you time you would have spent catching up and creates a better customer experience since the customer won't need to recap their questions.
Okay,
These
it's not.
scenarios are only a few
Can you pause
examples
it
of
for
the
one
I'm
many
so
second?
ways you can
excited.
use
I'm
Copilot during
excited.
Teams.
So it's not so much that it's automatically putting all of your notes in there, but when you do a
Correct.
transfer, you can open a chat and transfer.
And
Okay. And you're
think
just
about
copying it
this.
over, click and like copy paste. Okay.
That's exactly it. And think about like our agent wrap up times or transfer times, the
Yeah.
amount of time that it would take for two agents, a subject matter expert and a customer service representative, to talk about the customer, the questions that they had, and recap everything. Or they have an option to blind transfer, and then the customer has to repeat everything that they've said.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, I've been in those situations. No one likes
Mhm.
doing that. So being able to do this both quickly and efficiently and improve customer experience, that's why I mean it's that contact center or call center light type scenario that could really still add a ton to customer experience.
Yeah, this is actually really nice from a context center light perspective. What I run into, I might do soapboxing here. What I run into on the contact center side of the house when we're doing consulting work is you have customers with prem-based systems and they have all this licensing and so they use it and they allocate these contact center licenses to people that, might have maybe a hunt group requirement and maybe a couple of quality management things, potentially. But now when you look to move that to the cloud and you're looking at license count, I might not need 1,000 agents. I might need 700. And the other
That's huge.
300, and I mean, that's a huge cost savings. Add in some of the other cool stuff that can come in the contact center as a service space. That's really interesting. Now, tell me, in individual one-on-one calls, can I query that conversation post-mortem or is it just live?
If you've recorded it, you
Okay.
can you can query it post, assuming we're using Copilot, not Teams Premium.
Sure. Okay. Yep. Because the query makes it a Copilot license.
You
Um,
got it.
what if I have just recording set on my line? Does that cover that need to manually start recording, or do I have to do the record and transcribe with Copilot?
Or to my knowledge, and I'll say this because I don't have it turned on across the board anywhere, I have to go in and click turn it on every time.
Okay. Okay. All right. I'm going to go back to my other comment. When we were talking about in Word. So you talked about Excel. You talked about, hey, what's the formula for this, or how do I do A, B, and C? So it's almost like preventing me from opening a Google webpage and Googling that same thing, which I do as well in Excel, all the time. But in a Word doc perspective, I mean, how are you seeing people use this? Is it writing assistance? Is it summarization? Is it both?
So it's both, and we have to be. All technologies have strengths and weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
Summarization is good within AI, but it uses extractive summarization versus abstract summarization. So it's taking literal portions of the conversation rather than the overall thought, and then combining it together based on where it thinks the words should go the best. Keep
Okay.
that in mind. So always human check it on summaries. I have seen just some omissions or little things like that. Um, but on the content creation side, this is where you cannot rip Copilot from my hands. I will not work somewhere where it does not have it. In a creative position, like being in product marketing or even doing the solutions engineering that we do, a lot of the times we're faced with taking something very complex and boiling it down to very simple terms that anyone can understand. And I find myself more often than not staring at that blank page of Word
Mm-hmm.
with just absolute hatred because I don't know where to start. I've got all these great ideas and I can't organize them and I can't start typing until I've kind of got that format and that outline. Instead, now I open up Word and just spit out whatever I can, brainstorm with myself, and then go up and give it a little prompt at the top and say, here are the thoughts that I'm thinking. This is what the topic is about. Will you help me organize this so it's easily readable and understandable? Can you supply me with additional analogies that help further my point? By the time I do that 15-minute exercise, it can generate 4 pages worth of text that really get me to that 90-95% point of being good enough or even excellent that I don't have to fight with. That would just be hours and hours of creation that instead I've got a really good jumping off point, and it reduces that amount of time so much.
So when we're talking about generating content, one of the things I really liked with GPT-4 is that I could go in and tune it for myself. So I think, these are a snippet of, 5 different things that I've written so that it sounds like me. And this is the air I want to have. And this is the way I want to sound when I generate content, which is really helpful. Is there a way to do that outside of Studio? And can you do it per user, or is it always going to be a Microsoft admin thing?
For right now, I'm going to say that it's an admin thing. You're going to get the group organization temperature.
Okay.
Looking again at their roadmap, knowing what they're doing is with some of the video and voice recording to be able to pick up your intonation, your personality, the words that you use, if you choose to subscribe to those. And by that, I just mean allow it access to the data. I think we will see the point, because this engine is based off of the same thing that ChatGPT is, where we get that personalization, where we can start giving our own tone. Sometimes, arguably, I'm too friendly or a little too high energy or whatever, and I need GPT to tone me down just a touch to make me sound a touch more professional. That's not a bad thing, and that's what I have that doing on my OpenAI. I would love to have the same thing within Copilot, and I have very little doubt that we will.
Yeah.
Just not yet.
I also want to touch on what you said with it using GPT. We touched on this on the last webinar I did, but for those of you who weren't there, how is that working, right? Because when you think about GPT and OpenAI, you think open, you think Gen AI and Gen Pop, right? That's what I think. And so when we look at Microsoft and Copilot, it's much more closed and restricted, which is good from a security and comfort level at a company basis. But how are they using GPT? Are they using it as an open LLM, or are they using it as an API, or how are they restricting that?
So Microsoft runs their own instance. It's a couple codes back off of what the OpenAI most recent one is. So you'll see things on like ChatGPT 4.0, where it's got vision and it can do a lot of creative stuff. That's not quite there in Copilot yet. That's a good thing. The reason for that is Microsoft runs their own instance, and they run that against that graph substrate, which controls all of our security and how apps connect with each other. There's a lot of testing that goes into that to make sure that nothing breaches outside of a barrier where it should, that new model features or language features, capabilities, don't accidentally send something off the rails to be able to access something it shouldn't, generate something it shouldn't. We have to remember, on the Copilot side, we're dealing with an enterprise grade piece of software versus the consumer side, where errors are a little bit more forgivable. If we generate offensive content or something that shouldn't be there, that could be a real problem for a company. So those delays are to be expected, that we'll see the cool new features released on chat, and then eventually over time we'll get them on Copilot as they have time to test those.
I want the voice capability. If you talk to Microsoft, you tell them this. I want the voice capability, because I've used ChatGPT 4.0 on my phone, and you just leave it running when you're working on a project. And as opposed to like a pivot in Google or a pivot and GPT content gen, you just say, hey, what's a good way to say this? Or hey, I don't know, just a specific question. I'll look it up for you. It's like my verbal Google while I'm typing and I'm not changing screens, or,
Exactly.
hey, I need a really good quote about this, in the last 2 years, that highlights it. It's really cool. I want that in Copilot, and I want that for Copilot. I will say that I hope Microsoft's not on this call. I was never a huge fan of Microsoft, like from a tool perspective, but my gosh, have they made the right roadmap decisions, right? I
They
mean,
really have.
that graph capability that they put when they started Operator Connect and they made that so much easier, that was like the flip of the switch for me where I said, wow, they are trending in the right direction. They know that they have a foothold where people aren't leaving. They are too sticky. They have Azure, they have Teams, they have Outlook, all this stuff. You're not catching up on that stuff. And so they partnered and they opened it up and said, hey, voice is not our jam. And I think that you should partner on this, and that's fine. We're going to make it easier for you, for those that can do Operator Connect. I just think that was a brilliant move, and I see that happening as they're rolling out Copilot too. I will say, thanks for the thumbs up, Aaron. I will say that it's tricky in the fact that we're living what successful AI growth and strategy is with Microsoft. It's those little iterations. And so there's going to be like, oh, that wasn't a good one. That made me mad. But then they'll iterate and they'll iterate and they'll iterate and they won't ask. They just do it. But really, that is, if you think about it from a 30,000-foot view, the only way to successfully deploy AI in an organization. They're just very public about it. And so we're living that as consumers. But I think it's important to keep that into consideration internally as well. It's like we're still using Microsoft. We're still behind it because they have the right strategy and roadmap. The augmentations and the changes that are constant and consistent are frustrating, but that's also where you get to greatness. And they've done a really good job over the last 5 years, I think, of really separating from the pack a bit. Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry, I just went on a
I think
rant
so
there.
too. As one of those, founding Operator Connect members, how Microsoft designs their programs, it's hard to have qualms with.
Yeah.
They really take the input of a lot of their top enterprise and partners and solution providers into account when they're creating these things. And this is going to sound weird, but I swear it's a little bit like watching a child grow up.
Yeah.
You're starting off with these basic capabilities, and as you nurture it and as you learn to work with it, and as they're continuing to raise it, you see it increase in those capabilities. Like you said, there's not just this giant jump or leap. I don't think we're going to have a lot of those at the moment. It's going to be those little iterations, and that's just like watching something in real life grow up and get better and better.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm not one that is terribly fearful. I'm not as fearful as I am excited about what this can bring. Because you think about, so now we're just soapboxing on AI, but that's okay. That's why I wanted this to be more candid. I just don't think that it's going to be some taking over type of mentality. If we do it right, it's going to be such an enhancement that it's just going to be a whole different like creative flavor, because now we're going to be able to sit back, not have any of these monotonous tasks to do, and we're going to be moving at such a faster clip and being so much more involved in what we're doing on a daily basis that I think it'll be pretty cool. And it also democratizes itself very quickly. Thank you to OpenAI, probably. But it's just really democratized this type of technology so that a lot of people are contributing at this point, which is fun. All right, audience members. I'm always willing to give time back, but I also want, yes, comments and questions. Bring them on. So Aaron says little jumps are difficult to keep up with. Lots of quiet feature lunch. Yes, which makes
Yes.
webinars like this valuable. Good. I'm glad you found value in this. I was going to open the kimono and say, okay, these are the things that I am doing that are silly and I feel silly about. I'm supposed to be, someone who knows what I'm talking about in this space. And I said, I'm having these sidebar conversations with people like Michael Hawkins, who's giving me insight. Why am I not doing this more publicly? Because everyone wants to hear my questions too. So I appreciate the feedback. If anyone else has comments or questions, Q&A, chat, feel free to chime in. Michael, what else did we say we wanted to cover today? I think we did a really good job.
Yeah, I think we hit on all the main things that we wanted to cover, but I'll just jump off on one of your points there on the AI adoption. I do have one more slide that I will share.
Fantastic.
Just for fun. Gosh, I am a dork. That's for fun for me, guys. Current slide. Okay, so we did some surveys to try to understand. I know when AI first came out, like you were saying, people were a little hesitant, maybe. They thought they might lose their job. There were some trepidations just afoot across every industry, I think, because no one knew exactly what it could do. So On the left-hand side, you're going to see what we asked from knowledge workers, from employees, from people who are operating in the business. On the right-hand side, you'll see where we ask organizations where they would like to see AI. And it's no shocker, but people want to save time. They don't want to spend as much time on silly tasks or expend energy on repeatable things. They get too much information and they've got to find a way to filter through it. And then they'd love, like I said, my kingdom for a search bar that works, right? Very seriously, they want search to work. They want to be able to access the info that they want. Now, I think what's the most interesting to me is this giant gap between increasing employee productivity and reducing headcount. And I'll be honest, I think that statistic continues to go down with the exception of specific industries and verticals. When people first saw this technology, they thought it was going to be a replacer and a cutter. And again, I think it will in certain verticals. Everywhere else, they're looking at it more like a turbocharger, some kind of a way to extract more effort, or I'm sorry, more productivity from the same resources that they currently have. And in that same vein, it makes our lives and their lives a little bit better when these goals are aligned, and they're getting there, much closer aligned than when the AI journey first started, and we thought there were going to be massive job cuts, layoffs, etc.
Yeah.
People were questioning, oh my gosh, I just went to college for 4 years to become a developer. Did I do the wrong thing? Like I said, we're still at that point where it's a great way to bring everyone to a medium point, but right now our human skills can still override those, or be stronger than those of the AI. And for the rest of us mere mortals, we can use AI to bring us up to that mean in all the other areas where we're not that great.
Yeah. I also think that it's just going to be a task provider, right? It's just going to, all the monotonous tasks. It's like once you have your idea and you have your strategy, now I have to go and create all of this information and all this content. So I really like it around content creation. And I also think that it'll open up new jobs and opportunities too, because with every iteration, there's something different. Especially around policy and legalities, right? I mean, there's plenty of growth potential there, I will say. We can watch the EU for what's coming down the pike, but man, it's a slow start. It's faster compared to other things, but it's still a slow start in comparing to the technology roadmap and the scale at which we've adopted it as a nation. So it's been interesting. I'm constantly waiting to see, now when you have, I think in the EU, right? Was it a UK or EU fully where they said you have to have written consent before you can record and transcribe a conversation. So all of the Copilot stuff that we've been talking about with meetings, careful with your global customers.
That's right. And we actually today have an all-employee meeting at my company to discuss AI, recording, amongst other things on our topics. But that is something that you have to be aware of. There's different laws in different states. Yes, it pops the little thing that lets people know that, but it's always best practice to say, hey, I'm going to be recording this. Are you okay with it?
But they need written consent now.
You almost have to if say you're in written yes consent, or no. That's
very
really
interesting.
tough.
I'm interested to see what Teams does to have that be just a click-on feature so that you can get that written consent. Because that's going to be a game changer there too. You can get in a lot of trouble. It's funny how the burst in AI has really spiked conversations on security and compliance too, though. That used to be not so fun to talk about, and there was a bit of a lull there, and now it's like, okay, we're back. All right, Aaron, what are the next little jumps that you see on the horizon? Ooh, that's a good question. What do you think about that, Michael?
So my two predictions are continued integrations, especially where they're finding the biggest value in AI, which is sales and marketing. Users that live in that world find tons of time saving. So I think we'll continue to see deeper integrations on a lot of those CRMs and the ancillary products around them, like Canva for creating quick marketing campaigns or outreaches to your customers in an automated and AI fashion. We now do that, and it gives this really, really custom feel, but it's still low enough effort that it doesn't take us a ton of time to do. We've had Canva for so long, and no one ever used it. But now that we have it integrated, and it only takes 5 seconds to fill out the info, everyone's using it. And that
Yeah.
results in not only a better customer experience, but now I'm using something that I'm paying for. We're really getting those results, and the overall customer experience, that a buyer's journey, improves from our side as well. Those are the kind of fun things that are the unexpected wins.
Yeah, no, I like that. I also think, like, even outside of Copilot, that there's going to be a lot of consolidation around the different LLMs out there, and a lot of more co-opetition. We're already seeing models that are accessing multiple different components. I would like to see, and I don't know what's happening on the back end. I know that they use GPT, but I'd love to see different models inclusive of the Copilot capability so that it is more all-encompassing, and you can pick and choose LLMs within the Copilot environment that are more applicable to your use case. I would love to see that. I don't know that that's what's going to happen, but Microsoft has been doing a pretty darn good job on the road mapping. And I already said I want the voice option, right? It's where I can just talk to it as I'm
Yeah.
working on things. I just want to have it open and talking to it, so it can respond to me that way.
And I
Chaining
think
agents.
you're,
Yes, agent chaining. I was just on an LLM webinar yesterday
that's
trying to
it.
get smarter. Yes, agent to yes, I agree.
Because now you
Agent
got,
to agent communication, not internally people wise. I don't think he means that. I think he means LLM to LLM, right?
LLM.
Different RAG agents and that kind of thing. So yeah, I can definitely see we got to have more. Thank you, Aaron. We got to have more co-opetition amongst it. There's just so much going on in so many building that there's a lot of noise, but a lot of noise means a lot of consolidation. So I think we'll see it kind of settling in, and everything will get better by working together. I love that.
I
All
think so
right.
too. The one advantage that I see on the GPT side, that in why I think you're right, that we won't see that very soon on the Microsoft side. Again, that's that business to consumer model with less regulations, less legal pieces there, so people
Yes.
can create specific LLMs to be subject matter experts and do that chaining type model.
Hmm.
Whereas Microsoft, it's an enterprise product. So we've got to be cross our T's,
Yeah.
dot our I's, compliancy, regulation, legal. That will probably take longer to get that ecosystem up to par with where OpenAI's is.
That's fair. That's a fair assessment. I can see that too, because one of the Azure GPT option, I mean, one of the highlights of it is the security component of it. So organizations
Yes.
are much more comfortable starting to access that. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that sword has two edges. It's definitely
Hmm.
double-edged.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. All right. Anything else that you want to touch base on, Michael, before we wrap?
Well, gosh, Leah, no, I love these type of
Me too.
conversations. I want to say thank you to you for hosting me and having me
Of
here.
course.
I love your thirst for knowledge and being so humble to be able to go out in front of everyone who have the same questions, who are trying to find this info. I absolutely adore that. Thank you for making me a part of that.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. I truly appreciate it. Anyone else that has any questions? I see Aaron on the keyboard right now, so I'm going to wait for you to type. Um, Thank you. I appreciate you being
Thank
here,
you.
Erin. And thank you to all of you that came. If there's anything that we can do to help, if you want to elongate any of these questions, if you didn't want to ask it publicly, please reach out. I'll send out the recording to everybody who registered, even if they weren't able to join, so that you can share that with other folks in your organizations as well. But thank you for your time. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.